Redline Logbook here for Wistoria Chapter 9. We start off with Elfie sleeping, actually, in her chair, and apparently her aide decides to wake her up by smacking her in the head. Her aide's name is Sarissa. She seems to be a proper-looking older woman, and the best way to describe her is basically Elfie's nanny. I say that because she complains that all Elfie does is sleep or stare at the bottom of the tower, obviously looking for Will. Sarissa then hands Elfie a stack of papers that report on the prospective people going to be invited to the tower, and at the top of the list, of course, is Julius. And as an ice mage, he is expected to be Elfie's successor as the next ice faction's Magia Wanda. We then return to the crown game where Julius and Will are about to fight, and Julius is over the moon of the fact that Will is here because he's been planning on using Will to demonstrate just how amazing he is. The first thing Julius does is create a smokescreen. By doing this, Will is blind because he also can't sense magic, but the others can see where he's at because they have sensory spells. But Will still has his own senses, and he can hear them moving around, so he knows they're planning on surrounding him. He then continuously dodges their attacks one after another until he can pinpoint where each of them are at, and then once he knows where they're all firing from, he then charges at one of them. But when he does that, he doesn't just see one of his opponents, he sees all three of them. And then a fourth shot from a different direction comes and barely grazes Will. Julius then mocks him, saying that we haven't even taken one step, where are you going? And it turns out that once again Julius is using his clones. At first Will thinks it might be an illusion, but then he realizes no, this spell is, and then before he can finish that thought, one of the ice clones that's closest to him explodes. It's not a fire explosion, it's an ice explosion, so instead of getting burned, Will's encased in ice, but still, this immobilizes him. But more importantly, Will is pissed off that this is one of Elfie's spells. Elfie is known as one of the greatest genius amongst the Magi Wanda because she created 12 unique spells, and this was actually her first, the one that made her a Magi Wanda. Ellis Wise, a spell that allows you to make ice clones of yourself that also have the ability to cast spells themselves. Will then demands how can he use one of Elfie's spells, and I assumed that it was given to him by someone else in the tower, but in reality, he literally just figured it out himself by studying. Julius claims that it was no big deal learning this spell. This is a lie, we'll get to that. But at the moment, he's just mocking and insulting Elfie, saying that she's no big either, and that he will soon replace her. Disrespecting Elfie, of course, causes Will to go into a rage. He smashes out of his ice explosion, charges at Julius, which is exactly what he wanted. Because then the other three clones then transform into a new spell, a binding spell that completely traps Will in a cage. And then Julius drops what can only describe as an iceberg on Will. Mike Myers, can't believe that's his name, announces that this is the ideal of a mage, to be able to stand still and still be able to defeat your opponent. Which, yeah, that makes perfect sense, but it also means you have no real practical training, so if you ever have to get into physical contact with your opponent, you're pretty fucked. Julius then uses this moment as a victory speech to the scouts so he can then be accepted into the tower. Both Iris and Loist are disgusted that Julius would try to use Will this way, but at the same time they also think it's funny that he thinks that he beat Will, and that if he loses to Will, well, that will just make his defeat even more humiliating. And on cue, Will then breaks out of the glacier. Will then finally gets his jab in by saying the glacier cooled his head, and he appreciates that. And of course, Julius is pissed off that his perfect demonstration just got ruined. But when Will said that he cooled down and he was thinking rationally now, he meant it, because he realized that Julius' spell was nowhere near the level of Elfie. Julius attacked, and then Will uses the cover of the attack to then get behind Julius' friends and then knocks them unconscious. And when he does that, the remaining Julius clones all shatter and crumble away. The reason why is because Julius wasn't casting the spell by himself. He needed his two friends' help to cast Elfie's spell. So while yes, he was able to figure out Elfie's spell, the problem was he didn't have the talent to do it himself. He needed help. And so now that his friends have been taken out, Julius is on his own. And as you can imagine, Julius just got humiliated in front of everyone, and he just got shown as a liar in front of the scouts. So his chances of getting in the tower are basically over at this point, because he is known as a fraud, and he will always be known as a fraud. His skill, his intuition, his ability to even cast a spell with the help of others, all of that is now doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how skilled he was, it doesn't matter how well he's performed at the point. He will only be remembered as the guy who tried to scam people. We then jump back over to Elfie, where she's telling her assistant she doesn't want a successor. What she wants is a single sword to stand by her side. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the end of this fight, but we'll just wait till the next chapter. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more Wistoria and other many things. Thank you, and have a great day.